This is a Squiz podcast. We're your shortcut to being informed.
Squiz Kids! It's your daily news fix. Fun, free, fresh.
Hello and welcome to Squiz Kids Today, your fresh take on what's happening in the world around you. I'm Bryce Corbett. It's Tuesday, October 19. In Squiz Kids Today, squishy toys for Christmas, growing coral in the Bahamas, the world's first space movie, and the pigs keeping us safe in the skies. That's what's making news, kid style.
The lowdown.
It's shaping up to be a squishy toy Christmas, ladies and gents, as a global shipping traffic jam means that only the smallest, squishiest toys will make it to our shores. Did you know that almost 70% of all toys in Australia are made in China? And that most of those toys make their way to Australia on a container ship? And right now, thanks to COVID and a shortage of shipping containers, it's going to take longer for the bigger toys to make it into toy shops, or to the big storage warehouses next to Santa's workshop at the North Pole, for that matter. Which means stockings this Christmas are more likely to be filled with plush toys that are easier to squish down, or smaller toys which are easier to transport, than by the larger sized toys like Tonka trucks or backyard swing sets, which are bigger, bulkier and harder to transport. Which is totally fine, because some of the best toys this Christmas are of the squishy variety. And that, my friends, is a crash course in something called supply chain logistics. I know, right? Sometimes I even amaze myself. And remember yesterday we talked about how New South Wales and Victoria were gradually reopening their borders as COVID vaccination rates in those states continued to climb? Well, the Queensland government yesterday released what it called a roadmap for a reopening of its borders too. It won't take effect until mid-November, and only if vaccination rates are sufficiently high, but there's hope that by Christmas, the Sunshine State will be open again. Woohoo!
Spin the globe.
Each day we give the world globe a spin and find a news story from wherever it stops. And today we've landed in the Bahamas, in the Caribbean, where the palm trees sway, the waters are turquoise and warm. And where a couple of friends have just won $1 million environmental prize for the work they've been doing growing coral in a tank. The friends have worked out a way to take endangered corals from the ocean, put them in a tank, and get them to grow at 50 times the speed at which they would grow in nature. Then transplant them back into the ocean to help restore damaged coral reefs. It's genius. And just another clever way where science and smart thinking is helping to fight the effects of climate change. The Friends Coral Growing Project was among 5 environmental projects from around the world that received $1.8 million to further develop their Earth-saving idea. I've stuck a link in today's episode notes to the 5 lucky winners of the Earthshot Prize. It's clever and inspiring stuff.
Spaced out.
And so we make our way to the country of Kazakhstan, where a Russian film star and director have returned to Earth after spending 12 days on the International Space Station shooting scenes for the world's first ever space movie. It will be the first feature film made in orbit. And all that's known about the plot so far is that a surgeon travels to space to help save a cosmonaut, which is the Russian word for astronaut. It's a big deal for the Russians to have gotten their movie crew into space ahead of a project that's already being planned by Mission Impossible star Tom Cruise and SpaceX CEO Elon Musk. In fact, Russia, which was once part of the USSR, has a history of winning in space. The USSR successfully launched the first satellite, the first animal, the first man, and the first woman into space. As the space race now turns to tourism and movies, there are some people down here on Earth who would prefer that those billions of dollars could be spent down here, like Prince William, who said last week that he wished the world's greatest brains would focus on trying to repair this planet rather than heading out into space. But what do you think? If you've signed up for Squiz Kids for Schools, there's a classroom activity where you can explore that very question. Meanwhile, there's a video of the Russians' return in your episode notes.
Animal Kingdom.
You've heard of Paw Patrol, right? Well, settle in and let me tell you about Pig Patrol. Schiphol Airport in the city of Amsterdam, in the country of the Netherlands, is one of the busiest airports in the world. And the fields around the airport are really popular with wild geese, which like to nest and to eat there. But the problem was the geese were wandering onto the runways and there were lots of collisions with planes taking off and landing. And while that's not great for the geese who get caught in jet engines, ouch, it's also a risk to the safety of plane passengers and flight crew. So, the clever Dutch have sent in a herd of pigs. The pigs graze in the muddy fields between runways, sniffing out delicious sugar beet roots, and in the process, scaring off the geese. The geese have found somewhere else to roost and to feed, and the pigs are happy, the planes are safe, it's a win-win. I've stuck a link in today's episode notes to video of the Pig Patrol in action. Those squishy snouts in the mud, it's just too good.
It's Q&A time.
Oh yes, indeed it is, people. We asked you to send in ideas for Andy Griffiths' famous treehouse, the one that's up to 143 stories and counting, and you overwhelmed us with your responses, which is a fancy way of saying we had more entries than we could possibly squeeze into one Squiz Kids Q&A. Thanks to everyone who sent in a suggestion. They were all excellent. You really are a creative, clever, imaginative bunch. And congrats to those of you whose idea we selected to be featured in the Q&A. Have a listen to the chat with Andy, and you'll hear how much he loved them too. The Andy Griffiths Q&A should play immediately after this episode if you're listening on a podcast app, or you'll find it on our website, squizkids.com.au. And as a special thank you, we've featured every single entry every one of you sent in on the Squiz Kids website. Take a look, there's some wacky, wonderful ideas in there. All links are in the episode notes. Meanwhile, Andy's book, The 143-Story Treehouse, comes out today. Look for it wherever you buy your books.
Time for the quiz.
This is the part of the podcast where you get to test how well you've been listening. Question number 1. In which country in the Caribbean have a pair of friends worked out a way to make coral grow really fast? That's right, it's the Bahamas. Question number 2. Which country sent a film crew into space to make a movie? Yeah, it was Russia. Question number 3. What sort of animals have been sent to an airport in Amsterdam to scare away geese? Yeah, they're pigs.
Shout-outs.
It's October 19. Today is Mawlid, which in the Muslim faith is the day that marks the birthday of the Prophet Muhammad. It's also a special day for these Squiz Kids celebrating a birthday today. Sandip and Sanya from Sydney, Sophia from Craigburn, Silas from Woodhill, Orlando from Forest Lake, Lillianne from the Sunshine Coast, Elise from Abbotsford, Tani from Springfield, Liv from Ashgrove, Lily from Kempsey, Jess from Glen Waverley, and Chloe from Munopara. And because many of our friends in Melbourne, Canberra and Sydney are still not yet back at school, we're sending out home learning herograms. Cody and Logan would like to send a home learning herogram to all the teachers at Yarrawarra Public School. Hey, that's next to where I grew up. Herograms also go to Miss Connor and Class 3-4J at Lane Cove West Public School and to Miss Mikos and 5M at Croydon Park Public School. A home learning shout out to Ben from Mount Riverview, who has been working so hard throughout the long lockdown, and another home learning shout out to James at All Saints College, the St Peter's campus in Maitland, with special thanks to Mick and Bonnie, who both provide loads of support. And finally, classroom shout-outs to those lucky Squiz Kids not in lockdown. To Mrs. Walsh and Class 3W at the All Saints Anglican School in Merrimack, and to Miss Campbell and Class 6C at Murrum Borough Public School. Don't forget, if you've got a birthday coming up and you'll want a shout-out, or if you're after a classroom shout-out or you'd like to send a home learning herogram, drop us a line at squizkids@thesquiz.com.au. Well, that's all we have time for. Thanks for listening to Squiz Kids today. We'll be back again tomorrow. In the meantime, get out there and have a most excellent day. Over and out.